Hey guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. So, if I have my dates right, which I do, I'm just being funny. Happy Boxing Day for those of you who celebrate Boxing Day. Apparently, south of the border, it's not really a thing. This will be the last of my pre recorded, recorded ahead podcast for you. I hope you really enjoy this one. I hope you had a good Christmas. We have New Year's coming up, and something really cool on December 30th, we will be having the Workshop Podcast Episode 50 Holiday Extravaganza. What does that entail? Well, you'll have to tune in to see, but it's going to be my first live stream after almost 2.5 weeks off. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Tune in to all the regular channels, YouTube, Odyssey, and Float. We will be there. Hopefully I'll have some guests and we'll have a lot of fun with it. So anyway, this week I wanted to talk to you guys about the lessons I learned from my recent power outage that I went through. Now, this is the second power outage that we've had since I bought my Furman tri-fuel generator. Excuse me, guys. Sorry about that. And this was the first one that I've had since I had my quote unquote whole home backup power system set up. So, my 50 amp inlet on the outside, a breaker on the inside, basically a setup so that I could run the entire house without any difficulty. And I did all the testing. You guys saw that before, but this was my chance. So about 4:30, I woke up and the fan had gone off in the bedroom. We'd lost power. We had an ice storm. I can't even really call it an ice storm, but a bit of ice. And we never found out why we lost power. I asked a bunch of people around town because we're all real nosy in small towns like this, right? Nobody found out. We don't know. It just went out. It ended up being out for a little over 2 hours. I really wanted some hot coffee. So I thought, well, I'm going to hook up my generator. And so I did. And long story short, I ended up running my generator for about 4 hours because as I get into it, I'll explain to you a few different things that I found out. So let's dig in. I always love doing these after incident reports. It helps me learn, it helps me share, and it helps me plan for the future for the next power outage because I love to be prepared, especially when it comes to my generator. First thing I realized is it'd be nice to have some instant coffee. So we're going to stock up some instant coffee in our preps. I don't love instant coffee, but instant coffee is better than no coffee every single day. So we're going to get a couple of pack sealed packages, put them down in the prepper pantry that you've seen there that I built, and we're going to keep it there. So that's just one other option, because if you guys have ever noticed when the power's out, for whatever reason, especially when it's cold outside, a person just really craves a hot drink. And of course, my hot drink of choice is coffee. I remember way back before I was even married, I was living at mom and dad's house, and we had a very long extended power outage. You might have heard me talk about it before. It was the one where mom and dad got a whole bunch of free ice cream cakes from Dairy Queen when I worked there because they couldn't keep them in the glass doored freezers. So I got to bring them home. We put them in the insulated freezer. Anyway, we didn't have any way to heat up hot water. I was a tea guy at the time. So I started driving around, kind of trading off with people. I went to my aunt's house and I can't remember what I took to her, but she had a wood stove in her kitchen and she had hot water on and I had a hot cup of tea, and that made my day. And then she sent me with a box of candles, and I went around and checked on all my coworkers, and there was one guy there who didn't have any backup source of light or anything. We left him with some candles, and it was, I can't remember if it was 2 days or 2.5, whatever it ended up being, but it was a good long power outage. But to me, nothing beats having a hot cup of coffee or tea or hot chocolate, if you're my daughter, when the power goes out. So before I hooked up the generator, I got thinking, and you guys some of you might think this is gross, but I love the idea of thinking outside the box. I had about half a pot of coffee left in my coffee maker from the night before. I took that, I just dumped it in a pot, put it in the side burner on my natural gas barbecue, turned it on till it boiled. I know, another sacrilege, the coffee boiled, but I boiled it, add a little creamer, a little bit of sweetener, and I was all set. And then my daughter woke up because it was early and her fan wasn't going either, and she got a little nervous, so I made her some hot chocolate, and white tea. That's her drink of choice right now. You can tell she's becoming a teenager. So that was what it was. We had our coffee, but before I even did that, of course, I have to be up early this time of year anyway. I'm always up checking for snow removal. And we did it. We had a little bit of ice. There wasn't a whole lot I could do about it at the time being because, well, it was still kind of raining a little bit and I had to figure things out. So I decided to go around town. I shot a little bit of footage and different things. I might use it in a video down the road. But you know what? This was the biggest thing I'd never thought of before. During a power outage, when it's still dark out, the quickest way, and think of this as you will, the quickest way to find out who or what has power is to just drive around and look. And I was blown out of the water. It was really, it made me feel really good to know some of the places that had backup power in my town. When we had our big power outage back in March, in 2021, sorry, I plugged in our TV and our Wi-Fi router, and it turned out we still had Wi-Fi because the local TELUS building that supplies Wi-Fi to town has a backup generator. It was awesome. I drove by, you could see the lights on in there. It's an unmanned building, but we knew. Went by the water tower, and sure enough, the water tower in town, of course, had power. And of course, we still had city water. Although I was informed by somebody locally that we'd lost water for a couple hours before that. I don't know if it was related, unrelated, but they had power. The medical center had power. The hospital had power. The schools had some power. The brand new Catholic school had a lot of power. I don't know if it has to do with those great big, I think it's 200 or 300 solar panels on the side or not, but it was just really cool to be able to drive around and see, okay, these are the places that could serve as, emergency warming shelters or whatever for anyone who needs it. So yeah, just a thought. If you ever wanted to know where some of those places are, go around before the sun comes up because my town looked like a ghost town. Now, I liked using, so a lot of my thoughts this time are around the idea of coffee. Instant coffee would be great. We're going to do a project, me and the girls, we're going to learn how to make cowboy coffee. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically just boiling water, letting it cool down ever so slightly, adding loose coffee grinds to it, let it sit and steep, and then drain it off. It's about as old-fashioned as you can get. We're going to do that. I really want to get a French press. I put that on my list for Santa. So by the time you guys are listening to this, hopefully I got one. I asked for a Stanley one. It'd be kind of cool. But basically, I really need a way to make coffee, have caffeine, have a warm beverage when the power goes out. So that's part of it. Now, if it wasn't really cold outside, I wouldn't necessarily want to pull my whole generator out. So the next thing I'm going to look for is some sort of setup that'll allow me to basically run a single 1500 watt appliance, like a coffee maker or something. I've been looking at a few different ways to do it, and we'll see. I'm looking at possibly, well, actually, I looked at a rice cooker. A 200 watt rice cooker will boil water, so that's an idea. However, I'm also looking at some of those, they call them solar generators. They're basically just a backup battery system in a box, and they're a generator that makes no noise, and you can just pull 110 voltage off of the batteries. Has an inverter built in. There's a bunch of different ones. I wouldn't mind having something small just to hook up, say, the coffee maker or the microwave or something like that. Maybe just the TVs, just to get started. Go from there. Now, here was another thought. When you have your entire house, when you have your main breaker turned off, and you do everything properly, and you have your entire house running off of a generator, and the power, it's daylight, and the power comes back on, you might have a hell of a time finding out that the power's back on. You might just sit there and, keep running off your generator. Not the end of the world, but it sure would be nice to know. So I started digging, and I signed up for my local power company. They offer emergency outage SMS text alerts. So they'll let you know when the power went out, and they'll let you know when the power came back on. Now, I almost think that I signed up too late during the power outage because I didn't get any, but I'm on the list for next time, and hopefully that'll help. But either way, I honestly don't mind not knowing. The generator works great. Like I said, the only thing that generator won't run right now is my central air system. It's electric. We're going to get a soft start for it just because I can. And then we can run literally everything. So you guys saw my main shutoff lock that I have. It's made by, I think it was a Master Lock product. Anyway, the day I put it on and tested it, it seemed to hold on really well. But the day of the power outage, I put it on, it didn't seem to want to stay in place. And I really don't know what it is. Now my panel, from all the research I can do, I cannot find an interlock switch for it. Now, again, I love DIY projects, so I may just end up tracing out and making my own interlock system. We'll see. But I don't mind. I'm comfortable with the system I have, but having just a clamp on main breaker shut off, if I can, I don't know what I was doing. Maybe I was doing it backwards, upside down. I'm not sure. I got to test it a little bit more, but if I'm not comfortable with that, I am going to come up with some sort of full on interlock system. But either way, the main breaker was still off and in the locked position. I was able to leave that on there so that nobody could accidentally turn it back on. And that's your biggest concern when you're dealing with things like that. Now, from there, we ended up, the biggest thing for me was doing an inspection. Well, okay, a couple of quick things here. I wanted to be able to put together a checklist. And this idea came to me as the power was coming back on. I was turning everything back on. I need to have an after incident checklist, something that gives me an entire list of all the things that I need to check on after the power's come back on. Because even though I have my generator up and running, there's a whole bunch of things that would have kicked out during the power outage. So we're going to touch on that a little bit more down the road. A couple other things I would still like to get. I'd like to have a UPS, that's an uninterruptible power supply system for my computer setup down here. I had a bunch of files open. They were saved. However, it's a real pain in the ass when you can't shut your computer down properly. And of course, a quick power outage like that can really screw up your computer. So I wouldn't mind having a UPS just to make sure that my computers can be shut down properly. As far as that goes, one other thing I learned about my tri-fuel generator is you don't need to choke it when you're running on natural gas. That's where I ran into some troubles the first few times I was testing this out. I found it actually starts better if you don't choke it. So, because, with regular gas, you really need to when it's cold. But with natural gas, it seemed to start up much quicker and a little bit easier. In my, what would you want to say, my after incident inspection of the generator, on the outside where the exhaust comes off, there's a big grill that covers it. I had taken that off to put the Gen10 generator cover on, and I thought I had all 4 bolts tightened. Maybe they had a little bit of Loctite on them or something, because I ended up finding one on the ground and one was lost completely. So I tightened them all back down, and I need to find one replacement bolt for the generator exhaust. It causes a bit of rattling, the sound, I did some sound testing with the generator running. It's about 15 feet from the house. Inside the back door with the door closed, I was reading something like 45 decibels. With the door open at about 15 feet, I was reading around 78 decibels. I'm going to do another test. There's a few people around here that run diesel trucks in the morning, and I'm pretty sure that at the same distance, the noise would be very, very comparable. And that makes me feel pretty good, because if it's no louder than a diesel truck running every morning for an hour or 45 minutes or whatever it is, I have no concerns about people complaining about the sound. But it was just something that I wanted to do and test, and I'm going to continue to test the sound. I walked to the edge of my property, stood up against the fence, and it was right around 75 decibels there. And you would have to go another 30, 40 feet before you got to an open window of the neighbors. So to me, I'm very comfortable with that noise level. Okay, now beyond that, let's talk about the after power outage checklist that I wanted to come up with. Now, maybe you guys had some other ideas that you might want to, if you do, throw them in the comments, send them to me on social. I'd love to hear them from you. But for me, here it was. So the first thing, of course, I've got my big 6.3 extension cable and my natural gas line. So basically roll them up, inspect them, make sure there's no melting, no heating, no nicks or scratches or breaks. Put them all back together. I have a spot right in the garage where I can slide it right up onto a hook. So it stays there, out of the weather, off the ground, that kind of stuff. Reinstall the natural gas to my grill, because I have to pop off the quick connect in order to hook up the generator. Make sure that the valve is turned off so that I'm not just, spitting gas out into the atmosphere or causing an explosion or something like that. I have to reset the hot tub. This is one of the things, of course, I'm not going to run off a generator. And in the wintertime, that can be catastrophic. Is that the right word? But if it's off for a couple of days, it could freeze, and that I don't want to do. Just because the breaker comes back on doesn't mean the hot tub kicks back in. I have to manually go in and hit the temperature up button on the hot tub. First world problems and all, but it's a big investment a person doesn't want to lose. And also, I've been looking at it as a last ditch source for backup water. Anyway, I do not want it to freeze, and I need to check on it. That was another one. Hook up. Yep. So take it and hook up the trickle charger. So that's the thing. If you guys don't know, it's a battery tender, battery maintainer, trickle charger. It's a little 1/2 amp plug-in charger that stays hooked up to my generator at all times. That's what allows me to make sure that every time I go to start my generator, the push button electrical start will work. That's important because nobody wants to sit there and pull all day long on one of those pull starts. The thing is big, heavy, and it's going to give you a nasty case of tennis elbow. So make sure I plug that back in, then give the entire generator an inspection for damages. And that was always one of those things I thought, you know what, it's not really that important. But it is, because I lost 2 bolts, well, lost one and another one fell out of the cover on the exhaust grate there. To me, from now on, I'm going to have to make sure I go around and give it a good inspection. I want to check the hour meter. I have been running it periodically for 15, 20 minutes every couple of months. I'm only at 7 hours. The first year, they say you should change your oil at 50 hours. I'm not even going to hit that probably. But at the 12-month mark in March, I'm going to do an oil change either way. From there, simple stuff. Check your computers, make sure everything's turned back on, running properly. Go around and reset the clocks in the house, coffee maker clock, stove clock, that kind of stuff. It was all really, really simple kind of stuff. But you know what? I was really pleased with how this generator ran, how my backup power system worked. Because I'm an absolute friggin' geek, I even timed myself from the time I turned the main breaker off in the basement till the time I had the generator up and running and the whole house powered was 8 minutes and 45 seconds. I'll beat that time next time. But I am absolutely a geek. And first off, safety first, but I want to be able to know that I can basically do this with my eyes closed in a nasty, sleety storm. A few more little projects. I don't know, but I'm looking at getting it's fireproof or heat resistant mat. You can get some grill mats to put on my deck where my generator sits. It's so far from the house. And if you put the exhaust facing the right way, you gain a couple or lose a couple decibels when it comes to the neighbor hearing your noise. I also may eventually, even though I do like my Gen Tent, I wouldn't mind having a semi-permanent enclosure for the generator. I've been watching a lot of videos on insulated, soundproof, fireproof, vented, with an automatic fan kind of generator enclosure. That may just be a project that I'd like to do down the road. But as far as everything else goes, everything ran like a top. And that is strictly from, testing ahead of time, doing your due diligence, running it when I was so happy that I ran it in early October when the sun was out. I could do it in a t-shirt. I had no worries about the power, about heat running out in the home or pipes freezing or anything like that. I'm glad I did all of that ahead of time so that when we had this unexpected power outage, would the pipes that froze? Probably not, but it would have gotten cold pretty quick around the house. So because I did all that testing and prepping and prevention ahead of time, 8 minutes and 45 seconds later, my generator was up and running. It's not quite as good as an automatic standby, but I'm pretty damn proud of that. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I love sharing my, my different situations that I've dealt with the generator. I love talking about backup power, as you know. It always is enjoyable. And if you learned anything, I appreciate it. Take a minute, share this episode with your community, your friends, your social media acquaintances, that kind of stuff. And if you have any suggestions for other things that I can do on a after incident report or an after generator checklist, all of that kind of stuff, send them to me. Email therealtimcook@gmail.com. Social, you guys can add me. It's all over at toolmantim.co. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, just leave it in the comments. Anyway, guys, that's it for me this week. We will see you on the 30th of January, the 30th of December for the Workshop Podcast, episode 50, Holiday Extravaganza. Anyway, guys, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.